Today, part 2 of a comic collecting dream come true. Didn't see part 1? Don't leave now. You can watch that later. For now, you're going to want to stick around for the second half of this epic comic haul. Check it out. Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Chris and this is Northgarden Comics. In just a minute, I'm going to get out of the way so you can get a closer look at these books, but by way of recap, the books we're looking at today are a gift given to me by my brother-in-law. This was his childhood comic collection when he was a teenager. He collected from the mid to late 80s till the early 90s. He had a little over 400 comic books in his collection. He had runs, he had keys, mostly Marvel things, and let me pan down and give you just a visual on this collection here. So it's these two long boxes here. On the left is all non-X-Men related titles. You've got some Avengers, you can see some G.I. Joe here, you've got Silver Surfer, you've got Fantastic Four, things like that. On the right is what we're going to be looking at today. These are all X-Men related titles. So again, a little over 400 books in total. Pretty amazing gift. I said it last time, I'll say it again. Christian, thank you so much for this gift. This is literally a dream come true. I still dream about things like this happening, and I can't believe it actually happened. This is a once-in-a-lifetime type of occurrence. That being said, let me shuffle some things around, and we'll show you the books. Okay, everybody ready? I will say I've got all these books in order, so we won't be doing a lot of jumping around. There are runs and some keys, but I did hold out a couple of the more special keys for the end, so something to look forward to, and I'll try to do more showing, less telling, because there's a lot of books to get through. So, first up here is a mini-series, 4-part mini-series called The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. He had the whole thing. This tells the story, basically takes place just after Cyclops and Jean Grey's wedding. They're on their honeymoon, and their minds get pulled from their bodies. They go to the future, and long story short, that's where they get to raise their son, Cable, Nathan Christopher Summers, who's fighting with the techno-organic virus there, but they go to the future and they actually get to raise him. They're there for like 12 years and then they come back, of course, and it's like no time has passed. But that's that mini-series, and pretty cool to fill in some of that backstory of Cable, because at the time he was still a pretty new character and largely mysterious. Speaking of Cable, this is a 2-part mini-series called Cable Blood and Metal. So just 2 parts of that he also had. Then we got some Dazzler, actually just one Dazzler. This is the final issue of the Dazzler series. Got one Lonely Excalibur book, it's just a one-shot, this Excalibur special called The Possession. And then here's another mini-series, X-Men versus the Avengers. This one, really good shape. You got some newsstand editions here, but 4 parts, part 1, part 2, and then 3 and 4. And a lot of these books, fortunately, if you're looking to collect them, you can pick them up pretty inexpensively. Sabretooth mini-series here, also 4 parts, and he had all of them. Some classic Wolverine Sabretooth. And number 4. This was a 2-part square-bound story that was obviously spotlight on the Starjammers. I can't remember if I had already one or both of these, and he had one, so I either completed or got a duplicate with that gift. Another one-shot Strife's Strike File. Strife being a clone of Cable. Oh, looks like there was a trading card in there from when that came out. Maybe that was polybagged at first. Don't know. Exterminators. There were a lot of 4-part miniseries then. He had parts 3 and 4, and I have subsequently got parts 1 and 2. Like I said, there are a lot of these that I did continue to build out runs, especially little miniseries like that, because he gave me those first couple, and you can find those Exterminators pretty inexpensively anywhere you go. Challenge may be just finding the better condition ones. So I just hold out for the good copies. X-Men Adventures. This is the only issue from this volume that he had. This is based on the very popular 90s TV series. And then X-Men Unlimited. Only one of these that he had. I've picked up a couple of these since then, either for the cover or interior art, but I don't have a lot of those. And then we get into a run here. I don't know, it's never taken off with me in terms of wanting to fill out the whole thing. Started out, I think it ran 100-something issues. Started out by being titled Classic X-Men, and then it switched over to like X-Men Classic, and they're all reprints of early X-Men stories or earlier. The first batch of them in this volume were all reprints of Claremont era of the all new, all different X-Men, and some of those contained edits and additional pages to kind of pull them in with other stories that have happened since those first printings, so keep them in continuity there. But they're all reprints, and then some of them have the art on the back there as well. And there you go, Dark Phoenix Saga being retold. So just kind of cruise through these. You know, and if you like physical copies of comics, but you don't have the money to fork out for some of the first prints of things, it can be an inexpensive way to get physical copies of some of those stories. All right, then we'll switch this out and grab the next pile. All right, here's an example. We saw this in the last video where he had both the newsstand and the direct edition versions of each of some of these comics. So it tells me he must have been into having both of those. This was not something I ever paid attention to until the last few years, and still I'm not a diehard one way or the other, but I definitely notice it, and will sometimes pick up a newsstand if I don't have it already, if I know that I've got the direct. And what I have started doing is going through my CLZ app and editing all of the different covers. It's a very long, tedious process, but to indicate each place that I have the newsstand. But in this instance, he had both. And then I think after number 45 is when it got renamed to X-Men Classic. I think 46 was the first one that had the X-Men Classic. And I think also with that change, they stopped doing edits and additional pages or panels in the stories, and just reprinted Uncanny X-Men stories. Cool Storm. And some of these also, notice he's got, I don't know when he did this, but this was originally a bag holding Silver Surfer number 12 that he paid $1.25 for. And that comic store, that was one of the comic stores that I used to go to as a teenager. Maybe I'll someday go back and try to get the rest of this volume. But like I said, as of right now, it's not one that I'm dying to get. I'd rather have the original prints of all these stories. But there's two principles I kind of go by in collecting. One is don't judge what others collect, because everybody's got their way of collecting. And the other is never say never. Just because you don't want to do something right now, I found that even my own tastes, things that I never thought I would do, I've evolved, and I start to want to add things to my collection. So, New Mutants. I was reading New Mutants, or I should say I didn't get into the New Mutants until the very end of the run, the Liefeld era, as it went from New Mutants into X-Force. So all of the issues that I had before this were from that time period. And he had a handful of these in here, smattered about here, but his lowest number was number 46. Always love a good Sentinel cover there. Cannonball too, like Cannonball. That's a cool, love the character of Magic. Love that cover. Artist is Leonardi, down here. That's Sienkiewicz cover. You see his signature there. Usually when I think New Mutants and I think Sienkiewicz, it's the much lower numbers where he had a good run of covers and art. I start to get up. He didn't have a solid run here, but it kind of jumped around. Get into the 60s. New Mutants Volume 1 went for 100 issues. So we jump right in. We're pretty close to a key here. This is the first appearance of Cable as an adult, like the way he's shown on the cover here. This is the second printing, though. Fortunately, or thankfully, I did have a first printing, and I probably paid $1 for it because I would have bought it when it first came out. Most of the keys that I own, I happen to have the keys because I bought the book when it was new, and yeah, so just got kind of lucky that way. Not always lucky, but sometimes. The 91. So this is kind of where I started to get into New Mutants, and then see, he jumped. There was really no suspense there, but went from 91 all the way to number 100. And this here too is actually, I think it's the second printing. I don't think it's the third, but it's second printing. And I did have the first printing of this. I think the first printing has that purplish cover maybe. But he had number 100, and I know everyone's thinking, oh, did he have a number 98? He did not, and neither did I. That's one of those things where I actually have number 97 when it came out, and I think I got 99, or maybe I got 100 when it came out, but I wish I could go back and remember what the heck was going on that I did not go in there and buy a 98. And if I'm being real honest, I really wasn't even attracted to the character of Deadpool. I know that sounds terrible to some people because they absolutely love the character, but when he came out, I think I was in college, and my college roommate thought Deadpool was fantastic, and I just did not latch on to him like everybody else did. And maybe if I had, I would have picked up that number 98. And then one New Mutants annual number 6. A little bit of a jump now. We switch titles, and we also kind of jump right into the volume. This is Wolverine. This was his first ongoing series. He had the 4-part miniseries that came out before this, and then he got this ongoing that started, I believe it was 1988, and my first Wolverine comic was that number 1, and still have that today. So happy to have that, and another one that's got some value to it now, and I just happened to be, that was a new book when it came out, and I picked one up. But my brother-in-law, and what he gave me, his collection started here at number 11, and you'll see some of these. He had 2 number 11s. There again, both of these newsstand. But what you're going to see with some of these is he will double book his bag and a board. And I know that's not necessarily very unusual, but one thing that does make it a little unusual is that these are not Mylar bags and boards. That's a cool Gimli cover there. I think I had a poster of that at one point. But these are not Mylar, and eventually I will rebag them and board them with a fully acid-free bag and board. But I mentioned this in the last video too, that a lot of these fortunately have not deteriorated in any way. There's no color transfer on the backing boards where you would expect that. But the point I guess I want to make, sorry, I really like that cover too, number 50. And that's, you can't tell necessarily on this, but that's a cutout on the cover. And then 51. But environment is just as important as what you put your comic books in. If you've got temperatures that are extreme or humidity that's high, that's going to be terrible for your books. So bag and board, important. And I'll say it again, environment, just as important. So he kind of goes up here. This is another volume. This is an example where I had some of those lower numbers, but wasn't... Mark Silvestri cover. That's cool. I wasn't continuing after the low numbers, but because of this was a good jump start. And since then, I've made it a goal to have the first, I think it's like the first 100 issues of this volume, which I now have. And I haven't expanded it yet to where it goes all the way up to the end of the volume, which is, I don't even remember how many issues are in that. But, yeah, maybe someday. Here's another one. Look, this is Wolverine 63, but the bag it's in, Silver Surfer number 10. So, who knows? That's a cool cover there. And then, so that's the end of the ongoing series. And then he had this one-shot, Wolverine Save the Tiger. Keith, I forget his last name. I'm sorry, I forget his first name. This artist is the creator of the character The Max from Image Comics. That's a big pile here. All right, so that wrapped up Wolverine. Now we shift gears over to some X Factor, and this was, you know, there were a few of the X-Men titles that I got into when I first started collecting as a kind of early to mid teenager, and Wolverine was one. The 1991 X-Men series that Jim Lee started, that was definitely one. Excalibur was one, and X Factor was definitely another. Even though I did not start at number 1, I bought it as a back issue at some point, but thankfully he also had number 1, and then he had number 2. I think this volume went for like 149 issues, I want to say, is what it went for. This year, first, I think, cameo appearance of Apocalypse, and then first full appearance. So he had both of those. That's a newsstand, that's direct. But I think those were both duplicates for me, but still very cool to have them. We got number 7. What was I going to say about X Factor? I liked X Factor, and this is another example where, sorry, that's a cool cover. I think that's Walt Simonson, and Louise Simonson had taken over writing not too far into the run, actually. They were kind of double teaming this for a while, and this is a run where his gift really jump started. There's another direct and newsstand. Jump-started my desire to have the full volume, and since then, I think this is when Wolverine gets not Wolverine, Angel gets his wings, gets his wings cut, and again, direct and newsstand for that one. But yeah, this is one now. I do have the full volume of X Factor now. Oop, man, he had 3 copies of X Factor 15, and he had a lot of duplicates. 16 and 16. Oh, and another 16. Newsstand and 2 directs. But yeah, X Factor is a volume that's pretty easy to pick up. You can find back issues relatively inexpensively for the most part, except for certain keys. And so it's the kind of thing where, look at this one. He had 2 books back to back, both copies of number 19. And then on the back there's number 20. So he even triple bagged some. I really got to get those switched out. But yeah, I think the trick again with X Factor is they're not necessarily hard to find, but they can be a little more challenging to find maybe in the condition that you want. There you can see 24 is the one of the really significant keys. That's where first cover appearance of Angel as the Horseman of Death, but here's number 25. And 24 was the final issue that I was able to, at some point, obtain to have the entire volume. They go off-world. This costume, this was the earliest costume I remember Cyclops in. I mentioned this in another video, but I actually dressed up as that version of Cyclops in high school. Or I should say, maybe I'll show the letterbox. He was pretty cool looking. I thought I could get that costume, and you know, in reality, it was not that cool looking, but I felt pretty cool. Had Oakley blades as my visor. You know, comic books they're kind of interesting. I don't know, how any of you got into collecting, or if you had friends that collected too, but I started in high school, which may be a little later than some people because they usually get into them as a kid, but I really got into them in high school, and I was the only one I knew who liked comic books. It's not like I had this little club of friends that were all reading comics and we were doing this together. It was just me. I mean, I had a younger brother who collected a little bit, but not, just for a short period of time, and but it was me, so it was my thing. All right, continuing with X-Men, up here to number 62, part of the Extinction Agenda. This was a long crossover series, but a newsstand Gimli cover. It's pretty cool looking. I like the character of Havoc. And 62, 63. I like, is it Whilce Portacio? I like his art, especially these earlier covers. I love the line art. Just you can feel the energy and the motion of it. Very cool. And then we got 69. Whoa, another triple. Couple direct editions and a newsstand, so we got lots of extras here. And then 70, Mike Mignola cover. Here's the all new, all different X Factor, so new team lineup. This is a second printing. It's that goldish cover there. I did have a first printings, so that's cool to have. And then on the back there, 72. And kind of continuing our way through here. Strong Guy. I mean, I guess he's an okay character. It seemed like they were stretching for a name when they named him Strong Guy. Cannonball on the cover there, 77. I think we're getting close to the end of the run. Does it say Casada? Yep, Casada cover. A couple copies of number 80. Both direct editions. Oh, and this one had X Factor number 80 in it one time, so there was definitely some bagging and boarding changing around that happened. And I don't know if you've seen collections from 80s, 90s, or people who collected as kids, teenagers from this time period. I've heard of people who, this one had a poly bag, part of the Executioner song. But I've heard of people who either didn't bag and board their comics, or I've heard of some people who actually put them just in Ziplocs. So annual number 5, number 7, Casada cover again, and now we get into some Uncanny X-Men here, and he had a good run of these. This is another one. Again, sorry for being repetitive. This is one where, because he gave me a bunch of these, I had some, but not a ton. And this pushed me to the point where I said, I just got to keep getting these. So as of right now, I think I have, starting with right after Days of Future Past, I have everything up until, was at like 144-ish, all the way up to number 544, with the exception of 2 issues in that earlier part of the run. And then, like I said, never say never. I thought I'd be done at that point, but of course I'll want to get things below that. And I found a few random issues here and there that are below Days of Future Past for, a buck, finding a dollar bin or something. Of course, not in the best condition always, but I'd rather have it just in a low to mid-grade copy than have a really high-grade copy that I had to pay a lot for. So 206. We got 207. Ooh. 8. And I won't remember the significance. I feel like there's runs of these that have so many, quote, using air quote, keys. I won't remember every little insignificant detail. Number 211, though, I always, of course, recognize the 25th anniversary border covers. This one, though, is pretty well known. This first battle of Wolverine and Sabretooth, newsstand edition, so that's very cool. And then more Wolverine, Sabretooth, and I think first time, what's her name? Betsy Braddock calls herself Psylocke, and also first cameo of Mr. Sinister. 215, 216. Walt Simonson cover, like that. I just like the colors on there, and Dazzler joining the X-Men. Continuing on, we got 218. This cover, I don't love this cover. I said that the eyes and the faces just kind of freak me out, and I guess that's a compliment because it's supposed to, it looks like. Forge not looking his best there. Here's one. This is a first full appearance of Mr. Sinister in a newsstand. Another cool Havoc Wolverine cover. And jump 223. We'll kind of just cruise through a lot of these here. We're just about to the point, I think it was like number 226 is where I got my first Uncanny X-Men book. And this, I mean, this flashes me back. This was definitely, you know, high school for me. And they were doing sometimes, you know, three comics in a month where you'd have like early September, mid-September, late September. But they were definitely pumping out books. Here's another one. This is a second printing, and I think this is the first Gimli artwork on Uncanny X-Men. So, but again, second printing, and I do have the first printing. Again, just bought it when it came out, or right around that time. Just continue through. Love the character of Forge. It's very cool. I think maybe this cover may have been another one. There was actually a project in high school, my English class. It may have been junior year of high school, and we had to do this art project. I think we read, I had read Les Mis, the novel, the huge book, and we had to draw something from it. And it may not have been this one, but it was something like this that I actually tried to copy to kind of recreate a scene from that book. And Storm is child here. All right. And then 67. I've often wondered too, with some of these books where you get like this yellow kind of cover, even pictures that I see online, it looks that way, so it must be intentional. I just don't know why it was kind of that yellowed look instead of a white box. It's a pretty famous cover now, where it kind of ties together the backstory, or showing that Captain America, Black Widow, and Wolverine knew each other back in World War II time. But always thought that was a very cool cover. Ms. Marvel Rogue. That cover's been homaged different times. Here's another one. I guess gold, you know, now that I see these kind of in succession, gold must have been a way to indicate second printing, because this is like the third or fourth time now in this haul that you've seen this. Extinction Agenda again, Jim Lee. And it was during stories like this that I really started to get to know Jim Lee and really like his art. And then 275. This, I think, is the first printing. And I think in this case, I have a reprint as well, but the reprint is the one that's valued. And that's got gold text up top there. And 277. Some more Strong Guy. Kind of just try to move through some of these here, kind of dilly-dallying a little bit here. 282. First, I think it's cover and cameo of Bishop. And then 283 is the first full appearance of Bishop, so that's another cool couple little keys there to have. And then, yeah, I've always liked that cover too. I think I've tried to draw that one as well. I don't claim to have artistic ability. I used to, though, in high school. I would definitely try to sit there and just copy things that I saw and see if I could recreate it. All right. Sorry, I'm reading the stickers now on some of these because a lot of them have had different books in them than what the sticker says, but this one matches. Another couple, another duplicate. Oh, this one, you see, this one had some water damage here. You can, well, you can't feel it, but I can feel the waviness of that. I do have my, another copy of that. I've always liked this Will Spartaccio Storm cover on 290. forget exactly where his Uncanny run stops. Oop, another duplicate. One direct, one newsstand. That was definitely a thing for him. And get to that Executioner song. And then X-Men titles did a lot of, I don't know if I should say a lot, but enough that it's noticeable of these crossover stories where you just go from one title to the next to the next. Here's a cool one. This is always makes me feel nostalgic, these reflective covers. And I am still a sucker for them today. If I see one and it's cheap and it's not even a book I'm collecting, I'm liable just to pick it up just because it's cool. And there's little John Romita Jr. art on that one. Speaking of being a sucker for things, hologram covers. Super cool. And he's got 2 of them. Gimmicky covers, yeah. Some people hate them, but if it's a cool gimmick, I'm game. What was this? I think it was Emma Frost. Was it in Iceman's body? I don't know. And here, this is the only form I have Days of Future Past in right now. It is this trade paperback version, reprint. This was in his collection though, but it's a square bound. So, very happy to have that as well. So I've read the story, but someday I'll get those single issues. And then we got annual number 11 and number 16. All right, last pile here. If you're still hanging in there, congratulations, you're in the home stretch here. So X-Force, again, after New Mutants hit issue number 100, it went back to number 1, title changed, became X-Force, with Cable leading this team of mutants. You can get this number 1, again, pretty easily today, but they were hyped up pretty well back then in the poly bags. I have a few different ones. They came with trading cards. This has Shatterstar. I have the one with Deadpool in it too. I don't think there's anything on the back side of these, but they are in the poly bag, so don't know. And there's another copy number 1, and this was, Liefeld in his prime. This is X-Force 2, I think, was that like the second appearance of Deadpool. And then so he's got some of these early ones. This is one, I don't have the full volume of X-Force. I had a handful of the early issues just like he did, and I think now I'm up to having the first 50. And for right now, that's fine. I don't have any inkling to go any higher than that. We'll see if that changes someday. I still have to read them all. That's the thing. See if I get into them enough to want to get the rest of them. Liefeld's still here. Domino. Very cool. Got some Strife action there. Deadpool Domino. Cool cover. Cannonball. Loved Cannonball. One of my favorite characters on that team there. 15. See more Executioner song. Where that crossover? And I think that's gonna be about at the end of his War Machine. Cool. His run of X-Force here. X-Force Annual number 1 from 92. And then we get into this very famous run of X-Men Volume 2. Jim Lee, most famous for, I guess, or sold so many copies of this. And there were like, what, 5 different covers. This was part of that connecting cover. It may have gone, I don't know if there was one to the left here, but there were 4 or 5 in a row. And, at the time, that was, the height of the speculator market and variant covers. And of course I bought one of every cover when that came out, but he had number 1, number 2, you've got 3, there's a nice little key, first Omega Red. I remember thinking Omega Red was pretty scary when he came out. His, basically sucking the life force out of people. I was like, oh, I don't even know how they're going to beat him. Is he too powerful? But he's not. on these early issues here. I forget what issue he dropped off on, but I think we're gonna do a jump here. Keyword cover, yeah, jumping up to number 30. This is the wedding of Cyclops and Jean Grey, and again, it was right after this that where we started, that Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. That's where that takes place in, you know, in continuity there. But wedding of Cyclops and Jean Grey, wraparound cover, and that's a cool Gambit Sabretooth cover. Again, double there, duplicate. Oh, both direct edition though. And then an annual. Now we're just about done, but I did say at the beginning I was going to save a couple of the really cool keys for the end. I already mentioned earlier there was no New Mutants number 98. You did see a second printing of the first appearance of Cable. So what did I hold back and not show you till the end? Well, let's see, for those of you who have hung in there this long. Or fast forwarded, let's be honest, some of you did that as well. Look at that, we got a, well, I know there's debate, but you know, technically second appearance of Gambit, right? Newsstand edition. And I did have one of these. This is another example where I did happen to buy it. And I was a pretty big fan of Gambit at the time, and when he first came out. So I got a Gambit, and depending on which side of that, if we still call it a debate, which side you come down on, you know, when in doubt, get both books. So whether you're a proponent of this book or this book, I think that's the winner for first appearance, but why not just have both? And that's, again, another instance. I already had that annual, but now I have 2 copies of that. Very cool to have those, though. And then the last book I'll show you was one I'm very excited to have, because it's a book that I probably would not have bought since then, and because I'd never be able to find it for cheap, and it's just really cool to have. But he did have Wolverine #1 from that very first 4-part miniseries, and it's a newsstand edition. It's in very good condition, but again, this is a super cool book to have, and if it weren't for this gift, again, I probably would never have, you know, bit the bullet and bought it myself. So super happy with that, and that is the final book to show you. All right, well, that's going to do it for me, and that's going to conclude this 2-part epic comic haul showing you the books that I was given as a gift by my brother-in-law, constituting his childhood comic book collection. So fantastic, once-in-a-lifetime type of occurrence, though secretly I'm dreaming that it'll happen again someday, like I'm sure all of you are as well. If you saw something you liked, let me know about it. Or if you've ever been given a really cool gift of comics, let me know in the comments section down below. If you have not watched part 1, now's the time you can go do that. There'll be a video link right up here for you to be able to click on that and go check that out. But maybe give yourself a break. That's another chunk of a video as well, and then come back and watch that. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.